Selecting a new WTO Director General, implications for the global trading system. Updated February 18, 2021. The United States and members of the World Trade Organization (WTO) have selected new leadership for the WTO Secretariat, following Director General (DG) Roberto Azevedo's unexpected early resignation in August 2020. On February 15, 2021, WTO members agreed by consensus on the appointment of Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a historic decision as the first woman and first African DG. The appointment comes after prolonged delay, due to the Trump administration's opposition. In October 2020, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and South Korea's Yoon Myung-hee advanced as the top of 8 candidates, with the broadest support from the membership. After intensive consultations, the selection committee announced Okonjo-Iweala as the candidate most likely to attract the required consensus of all 164 WTO members, recommending her as the next DG. The United States was the only country that refused to back Okonjo-Iweala, who holds dual U.S. citizenship. The Trump administration response was met with critical reception by numerous observers, amid concerns of gridlock over a decision. In February 2021, Yu withdrew her candidacy, and the new Biden administration announced its support for Okonjo-Iweala, unlocking the process for an expeditious appointment. WTO members and observers view fresh leadership as important to inject new momentum into the institution, amid efforts to salvage its relevance and chart a path forward. In the race, analysts variously called for an honest broker and dealmaker, politician over technocrat, or a peacekeeper. As former finance minister of Nigeria and managing director of the World Bank, many observers see Okonjo-Iweala as well qualified and poised to navigate the challenges behind the work of the WTO Secretariat. WTO leadership may be particularly critical at this juncture, given members' divergent views over needed reforms and rules, a non-functioning dispute settlement system, and a recent spike in unilateral trade actions, which threaten the organization's legitimacy. The WTO and global trading system face significant challenges. The WTO's credibility hinges on the conclusion of outstanding negotiations, set back by the postponement of the 2020 Ministerial Conference, due to the coronavirus disease 2019 (COVID-19) pandemic. Meanwhile, a dispute settlement crisis continues and broader WTO reforms remain under discussion, complicated by wide differences among members. In the near term, WTO members face challenges in responding to the global trade and economic slowdown and spread of trade restrictions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In the words of the outgoing DG, the challenges facing the work of this organization will always be formidable, commensurate with its relevance and role as an anchor of predictability and certainty in a fast-changing global economy. Debate over the WTO's future direction has been of interest to Congress. Some members have expressed support for ongoing WTO reform efforts, Res. 746,116th Congress, and advocated for active U.S. leadership, Res. 651,116th Congress. The role and selection of the DG. Since the WTO is member-driven, the Secretariat headed by the DG has no decision-making powers. Its primary role is to provide technical and professional support to members on WTO activities and negotiations, monitor and analyze global trade developments, and organize ministerial conferences. Notwithstanding the lack of formal power, the DG is an advocate for the trading system and often wields soft power, relying on diplomatic and political heft in helping members build consensus or break stalemates, an increasingly difficult task. Some argue that the Secretariat should be granted more authority to table proposals and advance new rules. The WTO General Council (GC), comprised of members, adopted the current DG selection procedures in 2002. The DG typically serves a 4-year term, with possible reappointment. DG qualifications broadly include extensive experience in international relations, encompassing economic, trade and/or political experience, a firm commitment to the work and objectives of the WTO, proven leadership and managerial ability, and demonstrated communication skills. The original 8 candidates in 2020 demonstrated a breadth of experience. Table 1. DG candidates met with WTO members starting July 2020 to present views, which was followed by several rounds of internal consultations among members. A selection committee leads this process, headed by the GC chair. After the committee recommends the candidate with the majority of members' support, the final decision lies with the members. Table 1. WTO DG candidates. What's at stake? Azevêdo was motivated to resign early to prevent the DG selection from coinciding with the rescheduled 12th WTO Ministerial Conference MC12 in 2021, potentially diverting political attention from achieving critical outcomes. Such timing would also allow the incoming DG to better shape MC12's strategic direction. During Azevêdo's tenure, WTO members advanced some important achievements, such as the Trade Facilitation Agreement, but made little progress on resolving major issues left over from the Doha Agenda and advancing new priorities. MC12 stakes are high, with agreements pending on long-standing priorities like fisheries subsidies, and ongoing plurilateral talks, including on e-commerce. Members have also urged the WTO to tackle serious trade policy challenges heightened by the COVID-19 pandemic. WTO members also confront reforming the WTO, a difficult process but highly consequential for the institution's continued relevance. U.S. priorities have included reform of the treatment of developing country status, notification and transparency requirements, and disciplines on non-market economies. Meanwhile, trade disputes have accelerated between the United States and China. Countries increasingly have resorted to unilateral punitive trade actions, the subject of several pending WTO disputes, and, more broadly, protectionist trade policies are rising, which undermine the spirit and letter of WTO rules. WTO dispute settlement (DS), generally considered a success of the system, is unable to function fully, amid sharp disagreements over the appellate body's (AB) role. New leadership faces ushering the trading system through these various challenges. Okonjo-Iweala has emphasized an ambitious vision, but to restore its credibility, foremost the WTO must deliver early success and results. She pledged initial priorities of assisting in controlling the pandemic, laying the groundwork for MC12 success, and advancing DS reform. U.S. perspectives. The Trump administration characterized the WTO as an institution that has failed the United States and the global trading system, documenting its concerns in its trade policy agenda and AB critiques. In reversing the USDG stance, the Biden administration praised Okonjo-Iweala's leadership and experience, stating it looks forward to working with the new DG to find paths forward to achieve necessary substantive and procedural reform of the WTO. The U.S. delegation emphasized U.S. hopes that the institution lives up to its full potential as a body that promotes equitable economic growth through trade, and that the United States can be counted on as a constructive partner. Author information: Kathleen D. Chimino Isaacs, analyst in international trade and finance.